Welcome to my shortest video ever. This is solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. I'm going to do 2 examples, and that's all you're going to see. So this is short and to the point, even shorter than the factoring question, or lesson. So we talked about we can solve a quadratic using factoring, we can do completing the square, but sometimes those really aren't conducive to the easiest way to getting the answer. Now, something about the quadratic formula that you should know is that any quadratic, you can use the quadratic formula. So this is a foolproof, work every single time, get you to the answer as long as you calculate everything correctly method. So here's the quadratic formula. Memorize it, know it. You just have to know it. So we're going to solve for x. So first thing is you want to make sure that your quadratic is equal to 0. So I'm going to move everything over with my x squared term. So it's going to be 2x squared minus 4x minus 3 equals 0. I am going to identify my a, b, and c values. A is 2, b is negative 4, c is negative 3. I'm going to substitute everything into my formula. X equals negative b, so that's going to become a positive 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 4 squared. Make sure that turns out to be a positive there, folks. Minus 4 times a times c. So I am literally just substituting all those values I just identified into my formula. Alright, now, here comes the tricky part, simplifying. Please be very careful when you're simplifying. So for example here, when I square negative 4, I'm going to get a positive 16. Now, I am multiplying negative 4 times 2 times negative 3. So when I multiply those all together, I'm going to end up with a positive 24. And 2 times 2, last time I checked, was still 4. Okay, now I'm going to add inside my radical there the 16 and the 24. So I'm going to now have x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 40 all over 4. Okay, simplifying radicals didn't go away, right? Take your skills from last unit. Simplify the square root of 40. Factors are 4 and 10. Alright, perfect square is 4. Square root of 4 is 2, so that comes out. So we are now going to have 4 plus or minus 2 square roots of 10 all over 4. Now, as long as this value here, the coefficient of your radical, and the denominator, as long as all 3 of them can be reduced, then you are allowed to reduce. So we're going to reduce those all by 2. So we're going to end up with 2 plus or minus 1, I don't need to write it, radical 10 all over 2. And guess what? That's your answer. Okay? No need to write 2 of them. 10 can't be simplified anymore. Okay, that's as simplified as it gets. You can leave it like that. Now, if this is a multiple choice test on the Regents exam, they may divide each one of those by 2. So one of your options, even though you've gone through and done this process, one of your options for the multiple choice might look like 1 plus or minus radical 10 over 2. So just know that you may see some variation of your final answer. All right. Go ahead and take a look at number 2. Number 2 has x squared over 2 equals x minus 5. So the first thing that I want to do is I really want to get rid of the fact that that is a 2 divided there. So one of the things that I can do is my roots will stay the same. I can have many different forms and I can have different equations, and a lot of them can all share the same roots, and changing the coefficient of my a value changes the shape of my parabola, but it still keeps my roots the same. So mathematically, I can multiply both sides by 2 and still end up with the same roots in the end. So these 2's are going to cancel. So I'm going to end up with x squared equals, I'm going to distribute that 2. Okay, now I'm going to move everything over with my x squared. So what I did was I eliminated having to deal with an a value that was 1/2. Okay, now I just have to deal with an a value that's 1. So a is 1, b is negative 2, and c is 10. So once you find that a, b, and c value, you just go ahead and substitute into your formula. Let's see, we have 4a and c all over 2a. Okay, now, I think the trickiest part is just making sure that you simplify inside that radical correctly. Okay, so, and again, don't be afraid to double check things on your calculator. It's not a bad thing. So when you simplified all of that, I ended up with 4 minus 40, which is going to land us a negative value inside of our radical. So remember last unit we had talked about the imaginary unit, and if I want to take the square root of negative 36, this is a perfect square and it's negative, so I need what in my answer? Good memory. We need an I in our answer. So that the square root of negative 36 is equal to 6i. So this is 2 plus or minus 6i. Notice my radical is gone. I took the square root of negative 36. The answer was 6i, so my radical's gone. Now, if you'll notice, all three of those reduce, so I can reduce them all by 2. Now, in this case, I do have to use the 1 in my numerator, because it's going to be 1 plus or minus 3i. When you have I in your answer, that tells you that your roots are imaginary. This will not intersect the x-axis. Okay, so this is not going to intersect the x-axis. So anytime you have I in your answer for your roots, so that parabola should not intersect the x-axis. Alright guys, that was it. That's my video. Memorize the quadratic formula, be able to identify A, B, and C, and substitute them in. I'll see you in class.